Good morning to all my dear students. Today we are going to start up with a new topic, and that topic is inherent powers of the court as contemplated under the Code of Civil Procedure. Before I would before to start with this said topic, I would like to explain the purpose for which the courts are constituted in a country like India, meaning thereby we will learn about the purpose for which the courts are constituted in a country. As you all are aware that every court is constituted for the purpose of administering justice between the parties and therefore must be deemed to possess all such powers as may be necessary to do the right and to do and to undo the wrong in the course of administration of justice. To this, I would like to mention that this power of administering justice can be conferred on the court by virtue of statutory provisions or by way of constitutional provisions, and further it is also categorized on the basis of the powers derived to the courts by virtue of principles of equity, justice, and good conscience. Under the Constitution of India, you all are aware that Parliament, by virtue of provision under Article 33 of the Constitution of India, have been vested with the powers to confer new powers or to restrict the powers of the courts as contemplated under the Constitution. Meaning thereby, there are 5 fundamental rights mentioned under Article 32. But if those writs are found insufficient, then under Article 33 of the Constitution of India, Parliament may confer upon the Supreme Court or the High Court, as the case may be, to administer justice, and they confer new powers on the courts in this regard. Similarly, under the Code of Civil Procedure, the procedure and the powers have been dealt or have been conferred upon the courts, that is the civil courts. As you all are aware that Code of Civil Procedure is a procedural law. Therefore, it has to be made and handmaid of justice. Furthermore, as far as the exhaustiveness of the code is concerned, it is submitted that it is exhaustive on the points, on the aspect which have been specifically covered in it. But there are certain situations which have not been contemplated by the legislature at the time of preparing this legislation. As such, some more power are needed for administering justice with regard to the points or the issues which have not been dealt into or dealt under this code. As such, some power are inherited by the courts itself, and they inherit certain powers by virtue of being the court. As such, these powers are largely based upon the equity, justice, and good conscience. As you all are aware that powers have to be used in a very judicious manner. As such, some restrictions can also be imposed, or in other words, some guiding factors may also be looked into by the court while exercising its jurisdiction under the provisions of inherent powers of the court. So this is all about the introduction part of the inherent powers of the court. From the above, what I have stated, we may conclude that the provisions of the procedural law are to be liberally construed and thereby to advance the cause of justice and further its ends, and thereby to prevent the abuse of the process of the courts. Furthermore, inherent powers are in addition to the power specifically conferred on the court by this code. These powers are complementary to the powers which has already been contemplated by the legislature at the time of framing this legislation. The reasons for enacting or putting these inherent power in the Code of Civil Procedure, as this code is not exhaustive, as it does not contemplate all these circumstances which may arise in future litigation, and it is based upon a legal maxim, that is ex debitio justitiae. In that means the provisions of this particular topic, that is the inherent powers of the court, are made applicable only in the absence of the specific provisions in the code. The leading case in this topic is that of Manohar Lal versus Seth Hira Lal, EIR 1962, Supreme Court 527, wherein Justice Raghuvar Dayal held that these powers are not conferred on the court, but it is a power inherent in the court by virtue of its duty to do justice between the parties. Now, a very important question which may be given answer at this point of time is that what are the relevant provisions pertaining to inherent powers of court as given under the Code of Civil Procedure. The relevant provisions are Section 148 CPC, Section 149 CPC, Section 151 CPC, Section 152, 153 and 153A CPC, that is Code of Civil Procedure 1908. Before I will move further, I would like to explain these provisions to you. The first provision is Section 148. Section 148 provides that where any period is fixed or granted by the court for doing of any act, the court has the power to enlarge the said period, even if the original period has been expired. So, from this, we may say that where a court in the exercise of its jurisdiction can grant time to do a thing in the absence of a specific provision to the contrary, curtailing, denying, or withholding such jurisdiction. The jurisdiction to grant time would include in its ambit the jurisdiction to extend time initially fixed by it. The use of the word may indicates that the power is discretionary and the court is entitled to take into account of the party praying for such extension. In the words of Justice Hidayatullah, conditional orders are not like the law of Medes and the Persians. As Justice Desai, the danger inherent in passing conditional orders becomes self-evident because that by itself may result in taking away jurisdiction on the court for just decision of the case. So before extending the time, following conditions needs to be fulfilled. If the below mentioned conditions would not be fulfilled, then in that case, the court would not exercise its jurisdiction under Section 148 CPC. And these conditions are, number one, period must have been fixed or granted by the court. Such period must be for doing an act prescribed or allowed by the court. It is not applicable when the time has not been fixed or granted by the court, or a particular act has not been prescribed or allowed by the court. Now, what is the nature of the power of the court under section 148? The nature is that of it's a discretionary power. It's not a mandatory power that the court has to exercise. So from this we may say that the power given to the court under this section is discretionary power, which is to be exercised by the court on the basis of sound judicial principles. Next. The next relevant provision under the inherent power is, that is section 149. Section 149 of the CPC deals with the payment of court fees. Section 149 empowers the court to allow a party to make up the deficiency of court fees payable on a plaint or a memorandum of appeal even after the expiry of the period of limitation prescribed for the filing of such suit, appeal, etc. In this regard, we may have to give due emphasis to section 4 of the Court Fees Act. So we may say that there is an interplay between Court Fees Act as well as Code of Civil Procedure on this point. Now, I would like to read section 4 of the Court Fees Act. Section 4 of the Court Fees Act provides that no document chargeable with court fees under the Act shall be filed or recorded in any court of justice unless the requisite court fees is paid. So we may infer from the discussion regarding the interplay between the Code of Civil Procedure and the section 4 of Court Fees Act is that the section 149 of the Code of Civil Procedure is a sort of proviso to that rule by allowing the deficiency to be made within a period fixed by it if the proper court fees is not paid at the time of the filing of the memorandum of appeal, but the court fees is paid within the time fixed by the court, it cannot be treated as time barred. Thus, the defective document is retrospectively validated for the purpose of limitation as well as court fees. This power, as that of section 148, is discretionary power and should be exercised judiciously and in the interest of justice. Now, I would like to explain the section 151 CPC. The inherent powers saved by section 151 can be used to secure the ends of justice. Thereby, it is a means to attempt to prevent outcome of justice. Second expression, which is of immense importance, is that of abuse of the process of the court. It can be abuse can be done not only by the court but also by the party. Thus, the court can recall its own order and correct its mistake and can set aside an ex parte order passed against the party. What would meet the ends of justice would always depend upon the facts and circumstances of the case and the requirements of justice. Next, the inherent powers under section 151 can also be exercised to prevent the abuse of the process of the court. Such abuse may be committed by a court or by a party. Where a court employs a procedure in doing something which it never intended to do, and there is miscarriage of justice, there is an abuse of the process by the court itself. The injustice so done to the party must be remedied on the basis of the doctrine that is actus curiae neminem gravavit, which means an act of the court shall prejudice no one. Similarly, a party to the litigation may also be guilty of abuse of the process of the court. Example, by practicing fraud upon the process of the court and thereby to go for vexatious, obstructive or dilatory tactics. Limitation. What is the limitation? Even though the powers given under the inherent powers under this section, that is 151, are very wide and are vested in the court, but not applicable where there are other provisions of in the code. Next. This is all for today's lecture. Hope you all have learned from it. In case of any query, you may mail it to me. That is at my email ID, and my email ID is rahularora.gn@jagannath.org. Before winding up the today's topic, I would like to say or apprise you about my new topic, which I am going to take in my next lecture. And my next lecture would be on execution of decree. Till then, hope you all have a good day ahead. Thank you very much. We'll meet you soon in my next lecture on CPC. Thank you once again.